Today's guest is Bill Rumble from the UK, who started practicing in 1987 and he started teaching in 1992. He is the founder of the Welsh School of Homeopathy, which is in its 27th year and still going strong. Bill is also a fellow of the Society of Homeopaths and practices in Swansea while teaching at the Welsh School, the School of Homeopathy in Stroud and the Irish School in Dublin. Bill has also taught internationally in the USA, Kenya, Ghana, Czech Republic, as well as Wales, Scotland, England and Ireland, and he recently taught a 3-month postgraduate course for Middle Eastern homeopaths. Bill has certainly challenged my thinking in today's episode with some very interesting concepts, and I hope you will find this episode just as fascinating as I did. Enjoy the show.
Welcome to the Homeopathy Hangout, where we discuss all things homeopathy from around the world. And now my mum and your host, Eugenie Kruger.
Hello, homies, and a very warm welcome to Homeopathy Hangout. Today, we get to speak with the wonderful Bill Rumble from the UK. Welcome, Bill.
Hi.
It's lovely to have you on the show. I don't know if I've told you this before, but one of the homeopaths on my team, Sarah Scott, she actually studied with you for 2 years in the UK and was raving about what an incredible lecturer you are. So you have come with very good recommendations, not just from her, but yeah, but also some of the other homeopathic colleagues that have been on the show that have mentioned you as well. So it's really fun to have you on. Now, Sarah said that she really loved listening to you talk about integrating different philosophies into your practice, like TCM and a whole bunch of other stuff. And she said that you would say it's just all tools. Don't be afraid to pick up a new one. Does that sound familiar?
Oh, yeah. I don't know anything about it. Well, very little.
Well, tell us a little bit about philosophy. What is it that you enjoy about philosophy, homeopathic philosophy, other philosophies, and how do you recommend we integrate them all?
Well, I studied anthropology at university. So, I'm particularly interested in traditional African systems of thought and medicine. And the thing that I got from that was that they understand that actually everything operates on a vibrational level. And from going back to Hahnemann, I suppose, and going back to the organon again, particularly after Wenda Brewster O'Reilly, her edition came out because it's straight from the horse's mouth. It's pure. I realized from reading that was that Hahnemann understood that everything's about vibration, that homeopathy is purely energetic, and that actually disease processes are communication systems. I got really kind of turned on by that idea because the way I was trained in a way was that people were things, diseases were things, remedies were things, and that people's psychology was kind of like a thing. And it never really sat very well with me. So I was quite excited to begin to realize that people are processes and so are remedies and so are diseases. And the thing about processes is that they're essentially communicative. So it was a funny road from sort of West African music and West African masks and symbolism being somehow far more vibrational than consensus reality. And actually what I then tuned into was that the idea that remedies are actually, they act on a symbolic level as well. In other words, they activate they connect to mysterious places that we can never properly understand in the same way that we can't properly understand symbolism. So that was the road I took. And when I finished training, I kind of realized after a few years that I wasn't reading any homeopathy books. So what I always did is I'd pick them up and run with them. So I'd read a paragraph in a book and then I'd just go away and chop wood or walk the dog or do something else. And it would start to just go round and round and round and start to branch out and synthesize and everything else like that. So it was all connecting up to some other thought processes that I didn't know were there. So I've always seen the philosophy as being like a triggering mechanism, you know. So, yeah, that's where I got to. So I didn't realize I hadn't read any homeopathy books, but I went back big time to the organon and was also quite powerfully influenced by the work of Arnold Mindell, the process-oriented psychotherapy, which they work on the idea that when a person is sick, it's a communication process trying to happen. And when you decode Hahnemann, it's exactly the same thing that he's saying, you know. In Aphorism 7, he tells us quite clearly that it's through the symptoms alone that the disease demands and points to the medicine for its relief. So actually, this was an astonishing confirmation of what I'd noticed already working with, because the vital force is a multichannel system. And a channel will activate according to the interrelation between the therapist and and the symptom creator, which is the part of the person that's often mysterious to them. And when channels open, I follow. So I'm very excited by the idea of working with whatever happens during the consultation is a communication and telling me what the hell to do so I can be relaxed.
Oh, that's cool. So tell me a little bit about that. So what's your approach to a case take? Do you have a big intake form that you do beforehand, or is it more free flow? Tell us a little bit about that. What does that look like?
I mean, I ask people, is it a big story? And if they say yes, I'll ask them to email me with an autobiography, a short autobiography, because actually what I find is that a case-taking form is already prescriptive. In other words, you are telling them what you want to know. I don't care what I want to know. What I want to know is not interesting. What I want to know is what they want to tell me. It's such a therapeutic thing to do, is to write a short autobiography. I've done it, one side of A4. Soon, they're never about, I was born in 1925, blah, blah, blah. Actually, what you get is you very quickly get a vibrant incident. And if it's vibrant, it's still active. For example, working with people with trauma, if the trauma is dormant, you just don't go there. It's only if the sensations and feelings, if the sensations and feelings that they're still active, then work with the sensation and feelings that the person's getting right now. You don't have to say to them, will you go back over the most painful thing that's ever happened to you, please? So that's kind of the idea of working with the vibrant information, but we don't decide what the vibrant information is. The vital force has two parts. There's the part that is suffering from the disease. Every disease has two parts, There's the part that's suffering from the disease. There's also the part that's giving it. And almost exclusively the part that's giving it is a mystery to the patient. It's unknown to them. So the way it communicates is through symptoms and signs. And I'm interested when something comes up with juice, when something comes up with a bit of energy, I find myself shifting my focus and actually saying it's like, listen, this sounds crazy. It's like I'm communicating with the symptom maker. And it takes out all the speculative, theoretical stuff. We're so big into theory and speculation, but really a lot of the time it's like allopathic medicine. We're prescribing on our idea of what's going on. That's allopathic. Even though we're using homeopathic remedies, we're actually speculating about what's going on and making it. And I don't want to do that. I feel quite passionately about the fact that this thing's been waiting to communicate for at least a lifetime, at least one, and however many more. And when you're simple-minded enough to go, who's there? It's like a phone's ringing and you say, well, who's there? It's like there's a stampede on the other side to give you the information you need. When Hahnemann talks about the unprejudiced observer, I believe he's really saying the empty-headed observer. And the empty-headed observer is analogous to the simpleton in the Grimm's fairy story. I like that position. I don't want to know what's going on. I want an adventure. I want to discover.
And how do you, I mean, I'm intrigued in the autobiography that you get people to write, because I do have a questionnaire that I get people to write, but only because I want that healing process to start before they kind of come in. So because some clients will come in and they kind of, I feel like sometimes a lot of time is wasted because they didn't come with an idea of how they want me to help them. So I want to initiate something in them before they come and see me, so that when they come to see me, that they get the most bang for their buck, or we have the most valuable time together.
Sure.
So, but I like the idea of an autobiography because then it's initiated from their side. I don't like when we have to ask qualifying questions, because I want everything to come from their side so that it's just pure, unadulterated information.
Sure.
But some people, you do need to give that nudge. So when you say to them, write me an autobiography, do they just write whatever they want, or do you give them some sort of structure, or how do you do that?
No, I don't give a structure, but one thing, I like timelines. So it's like, I want to see a map.
Yeah.
Because that actually helps me to position the process.
Yes.
Because you've got to have a container. The thing is, if you're working with vibrant sensation, which is what we're working with, you've got to have context. You cannot have... It's like music. Organ music is the context is buildings with tall ceilings. You can't play organ music in a nightclub. Yeah, I'm talking like church organ. So the context is so valuable. Some kind of timeline really works with me. I like linear and non-linear. I like it when time is linear time, but also unpredictable, non-linear timing. So yeah, I mean, a timeline is great. I would encourage people to give me a timeline of their issues, because then I've got something I can refer to as well. But what's most important is what comes up with energy, what comes up with vibrancy. That's all we work with. Hahnemann says in aphorism 153, the symptoms that are odd, striking, unusual, and exceptional shall be especially and almost solely, almost all you keep in view when you make a prescription is what's got the juice. The rest is just detail. It can help you differentiate. We're often working with students, so they're very excited to get away from the hodgepodge of so much information. And of course, computers haven't helped, because actually what you can do is you can put in 50 rubrics, and it's like giving a pen to a monkey. Eventually it'll write the complete works of Shakespeare. That's an exaggeration, but I like that analogy. But you have to just work with what's striking, odd, unusual, exceptional. And another way of saying that, because Hahnemann really understood, I think he was inspired, and I think what he's saying is work with what's vibrant and energetic now, during the consultation. Has there been a change in facial expression? Has there been a voice change? Has there been a sudden animation? Do you notice something going on? You know, when I was training, some teachers gave us the idea that we had to have some kind of like an invisible boundary where we didn't incorporate our own signals. To help incorporate your signals. Notice something. Oh, that's weird. There's something going on here. Right, I'll shift my focus now. See if I can catch. It's like working with, you know, if you get I don't know if you get badgers in Australia, but we have them here, and they're notoriously shy, incredibly beautiful, incredibly powerful animals. And if you go looking for one, you will never, ever see it. What you have to do is to make yourself as spacious as possible, maybe leave your T-shirt in the garden for a couple of weeks, and then you might notice them. And the disease process it's like an animal, it's like making friends with a wild animal.
That's a good analogy.
It's interested in you, you know? It wants to connect. The disease wants to connect, it's desperate to connect. And it can't connect with the person because they've got an identity that's blocking it, some kind of an issue about who they are, and it could have been blocked for generations. You don't experience that. And we come along, and actually what we're doing is we're like, I won't say a conduit, but we're almost like an agent of chaos, where we allow this stuff to come into the process safely, like, you know, it's okay. So we're the conduit.
Yeah, maybe like a mirror, like holding, I don't know if it's a mirror, but facilitator of sorts, hey? Interpreter?
Yeah, maybe interpreter. Or actually, we're interceding on behalf of the disease.
Yeah, a disease interpreter.
But we don't interpret. See, the thing is that the symptom creator will give you the information you need, and the more puzzled the more you don't get it. If you tune in, if you tune into that channel, it'll work to tell you what to do. It does all the work. It does all the work. The only interpretation we have to do is to find a remedy that the matrix of the medicine is similar enough to the matrix of the disease, to create a response.
And what sort of symptoms do you look out for when you're in a consultation? I know I always say I'm never happy in a consult unless somebody's cried, preferably the client and not me, because I always feel like if they sit there dry-faced the whole consult, I always feel like I haven't touched what it is that needs to be treated. But when you see just the eyes just tearing up a little bit, it's like, okay, you've touched something that's probably where the healing needs to happen. But what sort of things do you look out for to know that the disease creator is speaking with you?
Oh, I love this. I had a student about 2 years ago, and she was talking about a patient. She said, you know, the thing is, I can't get him to open up.
Mm.
And I said, well, why do you want him to open up? She said, well, because I need to find out where he's pain. I said, okay, you be him. So you can't see this on the podcast, but basically, if you imagine somebody really stiff and really rigid and really, really like that, she did this thing. And I said, well, maybe you need to communicate with somebody who's really stiff and rigid.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see what I mean? Because actually, it's the stiffness and rigidity that you're going on. When I was working in California, I had a patient come in, he had dark glasses on and a great big bushy beard. And I said, how can I help you? He said, I've got allergic rhinitis. And I said, well, what? Can you tell me more about that? He said, yeah, my nose is blocked and sometimes I sneeze. And after a while, I realized that nothing was happening. And then luckily, I was able to get out of my analytical head and noticed that he looked like, I don't know if you get them in Australia, but you can get these trick masks, which is a pair of glasses and a plastic nose and a beard.
Yeah.
I realized that the only thing I was connecting with was his nose. And I thought, wow, this looks like Thuya. I said, do you ever get a split stream when you go for a wee in the morning? He said, yeah, doesn't everybody? So do you know what I mean? It's like, I think it'll show itself in any form. It doesn't have to show itself in painful form. It can show itself as an environmental synchronicity, like sudden gust of wind blows the window open and the person goes, I love storms. I had a great, I was doing a case in school and the patient she was a carer, a social worker, single parent, exhausted, so exhausted. She'd never had a remedy before. And just as she was about to start speaking, I noticed there was a flash of lightning outside and there was no thunder. It was an isolated like that. And she told me her story, which was kind of like exhausting for her. The struggle. And then I said, how do you feel before a storm? She said, I get terrible headaches. I said, well, what are you noticing now? I've got a headache now. So actually I was down to about 5 remedies already. And then she looked out the window and she went, like that. I said, what is it? She said, oh my God, it's nothing. I said, no, what is it? She said, there was a guy walked past with a rucksack and I thought it was a hunchback. And actually we very quickly differentiated phosphorus and silica, gave her silica, magnificent prescription for her because it really just lifted her out of her. So, I mean, it'll show itself somehow if you don't have an expectation of how you want it to show itself. I think, but it's a great provocative question, Eugenie. I really like that one.
And how did you kind of come to that? Like, is that just from years of experience? Because the more and more I practice, the more and more I realize I have to surrender. If I try to think that I can ever grasp this weird thing called homeopathy, it's a losing battle. So I walk into the clinic every day thinking I know nothing. I'm just going to surrender and just listen to this person and just hope that inspiration comes in and something the universe will speak. I always feel like it's the person's higher self speaking to my higher self. I feel like we're just the puppets in the room. It's actually our higher selves speaking with each other.
Well, lower self even.
Lower self, whichever.
I mean, we had an experiment in our postgrad course. So we run a postgrad course every year. We did an experiment. We got people to take each other's cases on camera and we gave them for like 5 to 10 minutes each. And the first time we did it, we said, okay, talk about a significant event in your life. And what happened sometimes was that it disappeared down a rabbit hole of feeling. Either resisted feeling or painful feeling or whatever. And then we decided the next year, we said, look, that actually didn't work. People came away with an open wound that wasn't proper. So we decided, right, this year we're going to create a list of topics, fold them up and put them into a hat. And you have to pick a topic. Things like putting out the bins, walking the dog, going for a pint, watching a football match, I don't know, just stuff like that. And it was amazing because actually the cases started to show themselves within a couple of minutes. Stuff started coming up because it had the space to come up. It wasn't preordained that it had to be deep and meaningful,
Yeah.
So that was exciting. That was a really exciting experiment for me because, deep and meaningful isn't always deep and meaningful. That's the way I look at it.
I also, so often our clients will say to us, oh, I don't know if this bit of information is useful. But I often say it doesn't actually matter what you say to me in clinic. Like, I'll be able to make something out of it. So you can talk about a football match, or you can talk about having a pint with your friends. It doesn't really actually matter what you say. It's the energy that is behind it, and the way that you say it, and the gestures that you use. And
that's right. And actually, you need downtime during consultations. And downtime is actually often really productive, isn't it? You have downtime when you take your eye off the ball, if you don't mind the cricket analogy. You just see what comes up out of the corner of the field. It gives space to the symptom creator to be creative instead of thinking, do you know what I mean? Instead of directive. So a certain amount of downtime is good. How was your trip here today? Or, hey, what do you think about that? When it goes flat, you can switch off. A bit like fishing. You go fishing. If you stand there looking at the
rod,
the rod and the line bobbing up in the water, the fish is going to be sitting there going, no way, man. Because there's no room for the fish. You have to allow space for the fish, you know. So it's exciting. It's exciting, playful, effortless, and doesn't involve thinking. When people say, I think, I'm usually fairly, accepting of where it wants to go, but we're not really interested in what people think. We're interested in primitive, rhythmic, energetic, vibrant energy that is normally marginalized. And of course, we all have stuff that's normally marginalized. Do you want it to come out of the bushes during a consultation, or do you want it to come and bite your ass in the middle of a relationship? Or do you know what I'm saying? It's like an opportunity for these things to come out and make themselves seen in a way that's not only is it not harmful, but it's also therapeutic.
Now, have you got any tips or tricks that you've used over the years to kind of talk more directly with the symptom maker? I know you've said a few things already, but is there anything else, like any other tips and tricks that you can give to the homeopaths listening to this?
Okay, well, you've got to be aware the Vital Force is a multi-channel information system. It's unified, obviously, because it has a vibrational cohesion, but actually there's a lot of different channels. There's the ancestral channel, or maybe more than one ancestor. You see some people, the ancestral, you get the feeling that the ancestors are kind of chaotic. There's chaotic ancestry. There's the channel, there may be another channel which is to do with an organ. It may be that if you're working with somebody, for example, with cancer, you're making a multi-channel prescription. You've got a constitutional remedy, you've got a remedy to help them with chemotherapy, you've got another remedy to help them with the, maybe work on the tumor. You're making a multi-channel prescription. So it's very exciting to look at this idea of superposition, which is like a number of different channels vibrating and constituting a whole, like the bow wave of a ship going out of the port. There's a lot of different waves, but they constitute a unity. And what is the secret of the whole damn approach is simply to notice which channel's signaling and to say, that's the correct channel. I see sometimes people work, they might say to yourself, I don't want to know about that. I want to know about a sensation. Well, maybe the multi-channel system doesn't want to give you a sensation. Maybe it wants your pen to run out and it wants you to get irritated. So it's like that. And of course, it's a lot more fun that way because you're not trying to make something happen. You're becoming an assistant to nature. What could be better?
Yeah, no, amazing. I do run a lot with just whatever happens in the clinic. And that's why if parents are stifling their kids in the clinic and they're like, no, speak to Eugenie, you answer her, I always say to them, just leave them. Just whatever needs to be, let it be. And very often I found that if I'll tell the client at the end of the consult what remedy I'm giving them. And so often the child will then do exactly the behavior that they're just like confirming the remedy that I've just prescribed. And, so they will like take that toy and throw it across the room, and the parent will be mortified. And I'm like, don't worry about it. Literally, your child is just actually telling me that they're just confirming the remedy that I've just given them.
It's so great, isn't it? And that's exactly what I'm saying, because when it knows that you picked it up, it's free to play. My friend Linda had a case. This little kid came in with his mother, and he was so rude to her. Linda was quite taken aback. But then she remembered she was a homeopath and started to view it with curiosity. And at one point, he got up on her. She had a small chest of drawers in the room, and he got up on there and he said, "I like a podium."
Oh, no. And then it's on a platter.
That's so great, isn't it?
That's a good one.
That's like an extreme example, but yeah, you're right. It happens, and it's lovely.
It is lovely. I do feel like sometimes we get handed these gifts on a platter, like the lady who I couldn't believe that this actually is a couple of years ago. I just started getting into prescribing the butterfly remedies, and she had the long sleeve shirt on and came for severe allergies and all sorts of, she had asthma and eczema, and it was just so much going on there. And I said to her, well, I'm going to prescribe the remedy Blue Morpho Butterfly to you. And she just her eyes just went this wide. She pulled up her sleeve and showed me this blue butterfly tattoo on her arm. And I was like, oh, that's just so cool.
That's it. You've got it. That's it.
Yeah, they're very cool. Now, I just want to ask you, Bill, how did you end up there?
I went to the homeopathic project in Ghana.
Okay.
And, oh, God. It was the year that Croatia knocked England out of the European Championships, but I can't remember what year it was. 2007, I think. I mean, I'd always been attracted to Africa through the music. And then I went to Kenya a couple of years ago to work with Richard Pitt on a project there. It just seems that Africa understands that the world is about rhythm and vibration. And
good way of putting it.
Yeah, homeopathy is about vibration and rhythm. And it's where you see that life so amplified. It's a real inspiration. Because I was talking to this guy in Ghana, and he was a professor of philosophy at the University of Accra. And he said, "Oh, tell me about homeopathy." So I started stumbling around with this, the vital force, it's a bit like that. And he listened to me really patiently for about 10 minutes, and he looked at me and he fixed me with his eyes and he said, "We're sounds." And I thought, Jesus, that's hit the nail on the head, because we're operating on a similar vibrational, a similar vibrational field, frequency to sound. And actually, I started to get excited by the fact that the ear is fully formed at 5 months gestation. We primarily experience the world through vibration, through sound.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's really cool.
Yeah. Because babies in the womb can hear from 5 months. And when you look at, for example, Sankaran's work, where he looks at these different levels of a hierarchy of symptoms, he goes name, facts, emotions, delusion, sensation, and then he gets down to one called energy. And I call that presence. And actually, presence operates in the same vibrational way as sound. So when you meet a person, you immediately, to survive, dogs do it, you immediately tune into their presence.
Yeah.
And so actually, when we're taking a case, we work from the center out, because presence is the Hahnemann calls it the Wesen, the energetic being. And we work from there out. You encounter the presence first, and then you start to work all the way out to the name of the remedy. You see? And a lot of time we're taught, start at the outside and go in. No. Start in the middle, work out. Connect with the presence of a person. And that's what I would call the tonal or vibrational level. And Africa taught me a lot about that. Connecting up. Because when you connect up, things happen.
Speaking of connecting things up, I always start my podcast asking people, how they were first introduced to homeopathy. And somehow we've just had this wonderful conversation, and I still don't know how you were first introduced to homeopathy. You did say you started out studying anthroposophical medicine or anthropology?
No, I studied social anthropology at university.
Social anthropology.
While I was studying, what happened when I was about 20, I lived in Southern Ireland, and a friend of mine lived in West Wales, and I was driving from the ferry going to London, and his girlfriend was staying with him, but she lived in London with her parents. And she said, "Oh my God, can you give me a lift to London?" I said, "Yeah, sure." So I got in the car and drove up to her mum and dad's house, and they had a really grand house on the Regent's Canal. I mean, it was a beautiful place. And she said, "Oh, come in, we'll have some tea." So I went into the drawing room, and there was a huge oak glass-fronted cabinet full of bottles with corks and copper plate script. And I said, "What are those?" She said, "Oh, they're homeopathic remedies. My dad's an amateur homeopath. He was also a QC, like a high court judge."
Ah.
I went, "Oh my God!" And they hit me with some kind of a wave of something. And then when I was at university years later, I was about 27. I had a girlfriend who kept on getting pelvic inflammatory problems, and they kept on telling me I needed to take antibiotics. So after 6 months of taking antibiotics, I felt like shit. I mean, and this woman, I had penicillin injections. Oh, God, it was crazy. I said enough, because I got a bottle of antibiotics that said, no milk, no sunlight, no alcohol. They went down the toilet. I thought, hell with it. I'm not even sick, So I went to see a homeopath, guy called Peter Chappell in London. And Peter was an amazing inspirer. And I just went and sat with him for an hour. And when I came out of there, I knew, no doubt, that the seed that had been planted by those bottles had found a pathway. And luckily, my social anthropology didn't contradict it in the least. I was looking at magic and witchcraft in African cultures.
They should have given you some recognition of prior learning for your homeopathic studies.
Exactly. So, I just started training. I qualified in 87 from the School of Homeopathy, which was in Devon then, under Misha Norland.
Yeah, well, I've actually just had deja vu, because as you were telling the story about giving your friend's girlfriend a ride and going in for a cup of tea, I'm like, where have I heard this story? But then I realized it's your video on the School of Homeopathy's website where you've told that. So for a moment there, I was like, what's going on? I've heard this. Where did I hear the story? And then I realized it was from there.
Yeah. So that's how
you actually graduated from there. So you studied with Misha.
Yeah. I graduated
how
in
wonderful.
87. At the same time, I moved back to Wales, which is where I came from. And I was blessed with the opportunity to go and work in California for 6 months. I was seeing like 20 patients a day, 6 days a week. Wow. And I realized that actually what was important was the process that goes on during the consultation, because there was no way in a million years I was going to go away and study those cases before I prescribe. And to this day, 90% of the time prescribe on the spot. So necessity has been the mother of invention, and I've started to value more and more rapid cognition, signals, communication. The idea that the disease is demanding a medicine, not that I have to be smart to somehow work it out.
I have to say I'm very grateful. Like my first 2, maybe even 3 years of prescribing, I would easily take 5 or 6 hours after taking a case to, go read up on that case, analyze it. And then I went through a period of just like, you kind of go around in circles. It can be so hard to prescribe. And then I just thought, I can't do this. And so I also prescribe on the spot easily 95% of the time. Nobody walks out without a prescription. And I will often, if I'm not 100% sure, I'll at least give them like a bowel nosette or a tissue salt or something but everybody walks out with something out of my clinic. And then I might, if I need to after that, but 90% of the time I'd say I don't change that prescription, because you get to a place where you realize that you could really spend all day on this case and you're not going to be able to help people if you do that. But 20 clients in a day, that's certainly going to
Well, that
force you
was
to
in
prescribe on
America,
the
yeah.
spot. Mm,
I don't do that now.
mm,
But, it's about paying attention to the signals,
yeah.
really, rather than thinking you have to be clever.
Yeah. And you also founded the Welsh School of Homeopathy in
That's right.
1995. Yeah, what
Yeah.
drove you to do that?
Oh, well, okay. So there was this guy called Adam Martander, who's dead now, bless his soul. But he ran a college in England, and he decided he wanted to start one in Wales. And so he kind of like got about 20 people lined up, got me lined up to teach. And so it turns out actually Linda as well, he got lined up. And then I didn't hear from him. And it was like, I'd turned down work in London and Dublin and all those other places. And this was in 1990, early 95. So I rang him up. I said, what's going on? He said, I've changed my mind. I said, well, that's great, isn't it? And then, thanks for letting me know. He said, well, why don't you do it? And I said, yeah, okay. So he sent me all the phone numbers of the people that were interested, and that we met up and started the school, which for me was a wonderful way to do it because it meant that we were all in it together. And I've always had that, the whole thing's about community. And, I would never presume to see a pyramid hierarchy in the school. We're all adults. We've all survived till this age. It's a victory just to be alive. And people have extraordinary experience. What I'm interested in is how can we make that experience, how can you make that experience valuable and useful in your practice? So, if you've spent a couple of years living rough, that's fantastic. I wonder how that could be useful to you. Somebody who's had chronic disease for years, how can that be useful to you now? Always working with what's there. And it's been hugely successful, and we've got an amazing community. And, I feel blessed to have made so many friends really, over the years,
And it's amazing friendships because it's people that just look at life in a different way. It's just, that like-minded community.
Sure, exactly.
Yeah.
We've got something in common.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and what do you enjoy about teaching? Like, I hope you enjoy it because you're still doing it after all these years, but what do you enjoy about that?
I like performing. I like showing off in public. I'm very shy.
Nothing wrong with that.
I'm quite shy, really. But yeah, I like performing.
Well, it makes it more fun learning from somebody who likes performing and who likes to have a little bit of fun, and makes it more memorable. That's for sure.
Yeah, I've got a streak in me. I like to be provocative and a bit disruptive as well. So yeah, it's a place where I can be maybe a little bit naughty in the best possible sense. Whatever. Yeah. Mess about a bit as well. But there are certain things that we need to be clear about in homeopathy as well. The importance of rigorous case management, all those things, clinical skills. I'm on it. I believe in that stuff. It's not random. Our amazing homeopathic ancestors gave us so much. They gave us their lives. These guys and women gave their lives to homeopathy. And there's so much richness available to us from the classics.
So much. So much. Yeah. I do love rereading them. It's really amazing. I think they could treat so many more different things that we in Australia certainly are not supposedly allowed to treat. And I guess they were trailblazers. Hey, they left some wonderful work behind for us. And I mean, we've certainly got loads of trailblazers these days as well. Just, so many of the guests that I've had on the show that are just flying the flag of homeopathy so high and, challenging the status quo of what we believe is possible with homeopathy and just pushing the boundaries so much. It's quite amazing.
What you're doing with this podcast, I mean, I think it's really amazing because what you're doing is you're giving a voice to human beings that are engaged with homeopathy instead of just facts and data and techniques and systems. This is about people. I really like that.
Oh, thanks, Bill. Well, we also have a Facebook group called the Homeopathy Hangout Facebook group.
Oh, no.
So I'll have to add you to that if you're on Facebook. Come and
Yeah,
join us. We've got lots of guests. The past guests are on there as well. And then the listeners. And somebody actually made the loveliest comment on there because Ian Watson was on the podcast for the second time the other day. And somebody asked a question about his show. And then I was like, well, I'll just tag Ian in the comment and see what he says. And then he replied. And the listener was like, wow, receiving a comment from the guest on the show is like the old school autograph. Getting somebody's autograph is the same as getting a comment. And somebody said the other day, it's so nice to see you bring the community together. And I feel that that's really important because homeopaths are practicing so differently, so many different remedies, so many people begging to have homeopathy in their lives and find out more about it, find a practitioner, get more access to remedies. And I feel like now is the time for homeopathy to really shine.
I think so. But I think as well, connecting people up and discovering that the teacher is a human being. I'm seriously excited. I love the idea that we're all wonky. You know that expression. I don't know if you have that in Australia, but
no, I know the word wonky, but we are all wonky. And I always say that to my clients. They'll almost like apologize if they talk about how they yelled at their kids. And I always say to them, just please never ever think that I'm perfect. I have all my own issues as well. We're all wonky.
I mean, wonkiness is next to godliness.
Oh, I like that. Yeah, we're all, and I sometimes think us homeopaths are the wonkiest of all. I mean, why did we choose to get into this profession in the first place? Because we're just trying to figure out ourselves in this process. Like while we're healing others, we're trying to heal ourselves. So,
yeah, I mean, one of the things that I've noticed actually is that people who get attracted to homeopathy have always been slightly odd. Being a bit odd. and I like odd people.
Yeah. Makes life a bit more interesting, hey?
Yeah, of course it does.
Oh, Bill, this has been a super fun chat. I'm just wondering, would you like to leave our listeners with any last message? And can you tell them where they can get hold of you and your school and, where they can find you?
Oh, yeah. Well, the Welsh School of Homeopathy's got a website, which is called the Welsh School of Homeopathy. We're currently advertising our postgrad training course.
Oh, amazing.
For February, March, April, May, 2 days each month, which is it's been quite successful lately. You can include my email address if you want.
Yeah, great. I'll pop it all in the show notes.
Which I think you have anyway. And what I'm interested in is connecting. So I'm not advertising. I like connecting with people.
You should advertise. That's what it's all about. We'll pop it all in that's what this platform is about. I want my guests to advertise. I want them to tell our listeners what they're offering. And, it's that resonance, it's that frequency. People will listen to it and they will be attracted and drawn to, what they feel vibrates for them on the level that they need.
Well, I work on Zoom as well. I've got patients in other countries. Mm. So if you stick my email address, if anybody who's out there is interested in it from that point of view.
Brilliant. And any final messages that you want to leave us with?
I like Goethe's poem because he was a contemporary of Hahnemann. And he says, whatever you can do or believe you can, begin it.
There's something about there's power in starting something.
Yeah. Whatever you can do or believe you can, begin it. I'll leave it with that because I cannot remember the rest of the poem.
Indeed.
So just do it. Just get it. There's an expression in
there
martial
we go.
art.
Whatever you think you can do or believe you can do, begin it. Action has magic, grace, and power in it.
Okay. Yeah. That's
that
right.
was Google, not me. That was Google.
No way. No way. There's another poem I love by Rumi called The Guest House. And I recommend that. He says, this being human is like a guest house, every day a new arrival. And that's a lovely poem because he says whatever comes is a message from beyond. Good things, bad things, whatever comes to you in your life, welcome it as a teacher. I think that's a lovely way of looking at things.
Certainly makes life a little bit easier if you can see the good and the bad as a teacher. And not as it's something out there trying to get you.
It's painful, but, there's no such thing as a free lunch, is there? It's get hard sometimes. But
Well, Phil, it's been super fun chatting with you. I love your
Thanks,
charisma.
Gina. I've enjoyed it. I've
And
enjoyed it.
thank you so much for your time. And yeah, we'll definitely be in touch.
Let me know when it comes out or whatever.
Will do. Have a great day.
Really nice to meet you. See you.
See you.